We're considering our options with respect to the problem of free will, and we're up to the possibility that the world is deterministic and there's still free will, the view that's called soft determinism or compatibilism. Unfortunately, some presentations of the problem of free will make it harder rather than easier to understand the options. I asked you to look at the crash course video on compatibilism, and I need to correct some of the impressions that it might have left you with. And even Appiah's textbook discussion could use some qualification. First, we need to get very clear on the terms of the debate. In a video that I didn't ask you to watch, the crash course producers set the problem up as a conflict between hard determinism and libertarian free will, to which they then offer compatibilism as an escape. In doing so, they sometimes seem to identify free will with libertarian free will, the idea that free will requires our actions not be caused. And they sometimes identify determinism with hard determinism, the view that free will is incompatible with determinism. This conflation is just wrong, and it's not helpful. Free will is not, by definition, libertarian free will. And determinism is not, by definition, incompatible with free will. If the crash course video people were right, the only question about free will would be the scientific question of whether the world is, in fact, deterministic. But that's wrong. The problem of free will is a problem about whether we have free will, or how we have free will, and that persists even after we figure out whether the world is deterministic or not. In the way I presented the question, libertarian free will and hard determinism each have two parts: an answer to the question of whether the world is deterministic, and an answer to the question of whether we have free will. It's useful to keep these questions separate. Next, both the crash course videos and Appiah's discussion frequently equate having free will with having moral responsibility or being eligible for blame or praise. This can be a useful heuristic for thinking about whether someone has free will when we're engaged in moral or legal reasoning. But when we're actually discussing the problem of free will, it's best to remember that even though we might care about free will because of its connection to responsibility, the two are not identical. For example, it seems possible to believe that the world is deterministic, that there's no free will, and that people are nevertheless responsible for what they do. If so, that possibility is enough to show that moral responsibility and free will are not identical. Okay, now we've disentangled free will from both indeterminism and moral responsibility. A second confusion that we need to sort out concerns determinism and fatalism. We're going to work on that one in the next lesson. Before proceeding to the next lesson, please read sections 9.10 through 9.11 from Kwame Anthony Appiah's book, Thinking It Through. We're especially keen to get a more nuanced view of compatibilism.